In this episode, I talked to Lisa Reinhardt about her life taking care of her 90-year-old parents and how it changed when her father passed. She decided to take her mother cross-country and move despite family concerns. She talks about the whole adventure, about the importance of a community, and the power of a spaciousness practice to help you tap into your own knowingness and trust yourself, even if the rest of the world is pointing you in the opposite direction. And she also asks us the thought-provoking question: what bold action would you take if you knew you could not fail? Welcome to the Flower Lounge, a place for conversations with wildly creative people and a little plant-loving wisdom to help you experience life in full bloom. I'm Katie Hess, flower alchemist and founder of LOTUSWEI, and I believe in a world where we're all living at our personal edge. Thanks for being with us on the Flowerlounge Podcast in person some more, which is really exciting.
This is great.
Yeah. So if you have previously tuned in, we've done 2 episodes before with Lisa Reinhardt, and they're fabulous. So I'm going to put them in the show notes so you can go back and listen to them. And Lisa's actually lived in Florida for the last 2 years. So really happy to have her back home in Phoenix, Arizona, and be able to do this interview live or in person.
We're live.
We're live. So yeah, we didn't really have too much of a game plan for today, but wanted to talk about the adventure that you just undertook as part of our conversation and why that was so interesting and unique and eye-opening.
Yeah. Given these interesting times. So I've been living in Florida for the last almost 2 years. I went down to take care of my folks. They're both in their 90s, and I was with my parents for a long time. And then earlier this year, starting in around early February, my dad got sick and declined over about a 3-week period, and then he passed on March 5th. That in and of itself is a whole other topic, I think, someday, but a really beautiful experience in so many ways. And one of the reasons that I was there, I felt all that time, was to be present for that transition and help in whatever way that I could, drawing from a lot of the work that I had done in Asia years ago. And I lived in the Himalayas, for, that's the other episode, for a decade, and studying practices to do at the moment and things like that. But it was really just such a precious gift to have that time, and before, during, and after. And then so I had just gone through this whole period of like complete unknown, right? To be involved in the death process with someone is really, every day is a day in the unknown. And there's part of you that says, is this really happening? Is it really the end? Are they going to get better? And then there's part of you that pretty much knows, what the trajectory looks like, where it's going. And it's just there to provide that space for the best possible transition that someone can have. So I had just kind of gone through that whole period of unknown and just felt like I peeked my head above the waves. And then the rest of the world started going through a really profound period of unknown in a way that none of us have ever seen before. It's really quite extraordinary. We all have our little pockets of going through experiences like this, but to do it on such a grand scale with the, massive collective all at once is really interesting. So I felt like in some ways I was a month ahead of the curve on that one. And then I peeked my head up and it's like, oh, wow, here it comes again. Like, here's a bigger wave coming. And so I just kept riding with that one. And one of the things that was made possible after my dad passed was that I had some very, very good help who could look after my mom, who still needed 24-hour care. And I was able to come home for the first time in over a year. And that too is very interesting. And that's one of the things that you were kind of curious about, right? Is that whole experience. of traveling when nobody's traveling, and doing things when it isn't the norm.
Well, I mean, you've always been traveling when people aren't traveling and doing things out of the norm, I think, for your whole life. But just the idea of like transporting your mom all the way to Arizona at such a sort of liminal, quiet time was really interesting.
Yeah, because it was, it had been in the back of my head to bring her to Arizona, but I had not intended to do it so quickly until I got on the airplane to come back for my own visit in, by then it was early April. And I got to the airport and there was no one in the airport. I got on the airplane, there were 8 people on the airplane. And I looked around and I said, oh my God, now is the time to move my mom. Because for background, for anyone who doesn't know, my mom is bilateral amputee. She has no legs. And she's in a motorized scooter and she's 92 years old next week. And so it's a little difficult. She hasn't been out of the town in 6 years, much less on a trip.
How long ago again was that she lost her legs? That was
2014, so 6 years ago. One in January, one in August, and it was, a huge transition for her. She was always very active, very powerful woman, and it really changed the dynamic of her life. And
I mean, as it would anyone.
Right.
I mean, any one of us, if we lost our legs, it would absolutely change our lives. And I look at someone like your mom who's in her 90s or at the time late 80s, and it was just like so inspiring and astounding to watch how she made that transition and kept a lot of her mobility. And this is so inspiring.
Yeah, I mean, even though she probably doesn't see it that way, but everybody looking on is like, wow, you're kick-ass.
You're doing pretty great.
Yeah.
I mean, that requires a lot of upper body strength.
Yeah. So anyway, so I got on the plane. I said, oh, this is it. And then it turned out that there were circumstances here at home that made it very easy for her to have a place 4 minutes walk from where I live, and caregiver in place. And so I went back, and with a cast of thousands, we got it done. Family flew in with empty suitcases, expert packing skills, and packed up everything. And someone drove the 2004 Lincoln back across country with all the strange and bulky objects. And then 5 of us traveled on the airplane together and got her here in a pretty effortless way, considering all the obstacles. It was like a dream. I know everybody's situation is different and everybody is feeling their own path through this. But it was really interesting to discover that the best path for me, the best path for my mom, was not necessarily what anyone else told us. And that, I think, is something that I think is important to share.
What did other people tell you?
There were certain family members who were very fearful. Some of them, I mean, mostly they held it in check because they know that I've been doing the day-to-day care work and that I wouldn't be reckless with my mom, that her welfare is, utmost importance to me. But at the same time, to buck the, conventional narrative is really, it's a challenge for people. And I totally get it at the same time, because I'm one of those people who, I was a really good student. I like doing well. I like following instructions. And when people give me instructions, I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. And then sometimes that other part of me rises up and says, that might not be the best for you for now. And one of the things that I've encountered, I think, over the last couple of months is that I find that there's a lot of people who I'm worried are not trusting themselves. It's like, I think we all struggle with that. And usually it happens afterwards and we say, damn it, I knew that I should have done this, or I shouldn't have done this. Like we do the Monday morning quarterbacking. But I kind of want to put out there that, check in, because if you think that something is not quite in accordance with reality, if you think that something might not ring true for you or your situation, because boy,
it doesn't feel right,
that it doesn't mean you have to follow, what everybody else is doing. Because, what I discovered was, for instance, my mom, I had a substitute caregiver who would come in sometime. Her dad went in the hospital for COVID. And so you could argue maybe she would have been more at risk to stay at home in Florida and be exposed to someone who might have been exposed than to travel. Or I discovered that, gee, when I go to the grocery store, I see more people than I see in the airport. Or, that I never got within 6 feet of anyone apart from one TSA agent. So there might be a lot of mitigating circumstances that.
So your family members were primarily worried about the airport situation and airplane.
Yeah, and that's all sight unseen, because they had not been in airports. They had not been on airplanes. They were just hearing, things that other people, not even people, had said. It was just news or general information. Don't do this, do this. And none of it was based on experience.
So can you talk a little bit about what was happening inside of you? What led you to make certain decisions, and how you use, when the rest of the world is saying, don't do this, what advice would you give someone to really get in touch with their own intuition in terms of what's right for them, regardless of what anyone else says?
Right. Well, I'm so thrilled actually lately that I feel like my meditation practice is really supporting me well in this way, in a way that maybe I didn't recognize before. Maybe I was too afraid to try before, or whatever. Things blossom at different times. But having a pretty regular meditation practice where
Pretty regular, meaning every day.
For like 30 years, give or take. Having spent a lot of time like resting in the spaciousness. I'm really, these days, I'm so appreciating the spaciousness. And when I do that, it switches me out of the bandwidth of the thinking mind. I don't have to suppress thoughts. I don't have to squelch them. It's just like changing a channel, And when I remember to change the channel, then there's a knowingness there. And so, like, the quote unquote decision to bring my mom when I did was not even a decision. It wasn't like, gee, here are the pros, here are the cons. If I do this, if I do that, it's like that never arose. And it's like, wow, such a relief. It's like such a freedom when that isn't your decision-making process, right? When your decision-making, quote unquote, process can simply be openness, seeing, being at ease in the spaciousness. And then the spaciousness knows, you know what to do. You don't ever second guess it after that. It's like, when you know something, nobody can tell you that you don't. And I think that's why, going back to why I think it's important that we tap in and really just check with ourselves, is this true or not? Because we need to build up that muscle, build up that recognition, that noticing of, oh, that's how it feels when I'm not engaged in analysis. I mean, and I am a super analytical type in a lot of ways. So it's been more of a struggle for me than maybe it is for a lot of people. But to let go of analysis, which is also tied to that wanting to do it right. Okay. Because there's a whole bunch of us, I am imagining, not everybody, but I had a real, like, I want to do it right. I want to be right. I don't want to do it wrong. And so that feeds that analytical, pro, con, weigh it, the mind that wants to discuss it all the time. It's like, whoa, exhausting.
Yeah, totally exhausting.
Yeah. And so to get into like change, like I say, like shift the bandwidth, change the bandwidth until we can feel the spaciousness. Like I just start with feeling my body, like I feel where I'm in touch with the carpet. I feel the sense of space around my body, like the space in back of me, the space under my ears, between my ears and my neck and my shoulders. Like I just find the space, and it puts you into a different state of mind that can be so much clearer and in tune than the thinking, talking, blah, blah mind.
And when you're in that state, you get the impulse to act, and then you just act without hesitation.
Yeah.
So do you want to tell us just like a little bit about your journey and just how did it go? You left the house, you packed up, like, and, you know, I mean, I know some of the story, but I think it's great. Just thinking about, you know, somebody who's in their 90s, leaving their home, moving cross country. That's a bit, you know, right after losing their husband, like you had been there for 2 years, like how did it go?
I took some beautiful pictures because I thought the pictures really captured it more than anything. Like the resolute look on my mom's face, you know, like the determination and yet a little bit of trepidation, you know, which is great because it's an adventure. Like an adventure is an adventure. And that she was willing to let go of control. Like that was a big theme throughout her life. And to be able to step into a space where she wasn't in control of anything and still have it be fine and good and okay and
maybe even fun.
Maybe even fun. Yeah. 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 Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah, I had this moment when I saw the van, you know, driving up, and she was being taken, you know, wheeling out the back, and I was just like, oh, like totally got caught in my throat with just like tears because it was just something so moving about it. Like, man, like this is what life is about. It's just like having the capacity to uproot and just kind of jump off the cliff and what comes next. And also just to see 10 people, there's literally 10 of us had some piece or part in either preparing for her to come or you guys moving her.
That was huge too. I mean, it just, you know, going back to like all the glitches and quirks I had to work out of myself. Like I was always, I have to do it myself. I have to take care of myself. And then in of course that world, I couldn't move her. It couldn't happen. There's no way for it to happen because it was not a job that could be done by one person. And then there was like a crack in the door and it's like, oh, I could have help. Like I had fabulous help when my dad was dying. And, you know, we spoke one day and we did FaceTime and I thought, oh, that's hilarious because you could see what was going on without me saying. And the next day you called and said, I'm sending help. And then 24 hours later, help was there and perfect help. So that was like a seed. And then it was like, oh, we wouldn't even have to do it just the two of us and her. It could be, you know, more people volunteered, you know, and dear friend and her 11-year-old daughter and injected joy into the whole situation. It's like, yeah, let's travel with an 11-year-old and a 92-year-old. It makes it so much better. And then everyone at home making sure that, you know, we could land and roll into a situation that was workable. Yeah. So helpful. Community is so important. Boy, and to be able to like
rally.
Yeah. And just around someone and give her all of the love and support that she doesn't even know she needs and she doesn't even know is available.
Well, I think that's a situation. I think about that a lot with, you know, the flower essences that we're working with, like expansive presence, and how we as Americans have this tendency to say, like, I got it, I can do it myself, I can manage, I can handle, how much can I handle? You know, how much
like a badge of courage, like a badge of honor that you can do it all yourself. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
I took a ton of banana yucca all that time. Banana yucca is what women working together, collaboration. And I thought that was really helpful. And the other one that I took a lot of was crown flower. Is crown flower out?
Yeah, totally.
Crown flower is amazing. And for me, I don't even know how you describe it exactly, but for me, it was all about taking bold action and knowing you could not fail. Right? It's like, oh my God, moving my mother cross country is like kind of crazy, but it was absolutely perfect. Yeah.
And even just to think about what does that feel like to have 10 people rally around you and take care of your every need? You know, like the boys coming in and getting Wi-Fi so she could get the right TV shows, and the, you know, you got that beautiful bed for her, and it, you know, all the different things, like the chair that looked like her chair, and the right, you know, dishes and foods in the freezer and fridge. And like, what does that feel like to have 10 people support you, you know, whether it's you or her or any one of us, and to realize that that's actually the nature of life. Like that's how things should be. Like every elder should have 10 people rallying around them.
Contributing in each in their own way, and each to their own degree, and each, you know, in their own appropriate moment. I mean, but you're right, it is happening all the time. It's like, where did these clothes come from that I'm wearing? You know, where did any of this around me come from? Like the support of thousands of people is present in every moment. It's just we don't even realize. It's kind of a rewriting too. It's a rewriting of the whole way of thinking. You know, like I don't have to plan it all. I don't have to control it all. I don't have to even know exactly what's happening at every moment. You know, but just putting it out there and letting people contribute. It's pretty beautiful.
It's so it's such a powerful feeling to be in a community like that. I mean, I think all of us, when we think about what is it going to look like when I'm old, what will it look like if I'm lucky enough to make it to my 70s, 80s, 90s? That's a thought.
Yeah.
And then to be able to contribute to someone's experience at that age and have it just be beautiful and nurturing and wonderful and lovely and patient, and it's pretty great.
Beautiful seeds planted. It all comes out of love. Like that is the fabric of it all. People show up to watch Jeopardy with her, have family dinner on Sunday.
Spending time with your mom reminds me of the importance, again, reminds me of just being present, of like how much of a gift it is to just be present with someone.
That's really key too, because I remember when she first lost her legs and she was really, really frustrated, and she had been such a doer her whole life that her sense of valuing herself was based on doing. How much can I do? What can I do? And I realized at that point, I said, "Oh, Mom," I said, you didn't get the memo. Like society now is kind of recognizing that we got way over too far into the doing realm, and now the pendulum is swinging back, and we're getting more into the being realm. And I said, really, that's your, you know, place now, is to be like a beacon of this being energy. You know, it's not like you're not doing anything sitting in your chair, you're radiating out. And it's interesting, now it's like being with her as an invitation to be. So she's reminding us to simply be, because doing at this age is it very quickly leads to frustration and a different state of mind.
Also, another aspect too is like digital, you know, like how quickly and how often we get sucked into our phones, our texts, our social media, our, you know, whatever it is that we're here. And in that space, it's like a tech-free zone, you know, just it's like innately when I'm around your mom or in her house, it's like phones out the window. And I think that is a freedom for all of us, you know, to give ourselves that opportunity to just be present. No digital swirling around.
That was something that I noticed when I first moved to Florida, was I could not, she wanted my presence, and if I was on my computer or my phone, then she felt slighted, she felt ignored. And so I had to shift my way of being when I was with her like that. I did take up knitting. Because it was a lot
lucky for us. We got winter hats and winter slippers and cool stuff. So when you're knitting, you feel like you can be tuned into another person in a way that you can't when you're on digital devices.
I mean, there's still a little bit of a, you know, it's a concession to my need to feel like I'm doing something. Yeah, I mean, to be truthful, but definitely without tech, there's more sense of presence.
And your mom always looks like $1 million. I mean, like, God, I was like, so what is it about the younger generations, right? I feel like I'm, hardly can get it together, but your mom just looks like, God, the earrings and the shirt she reminds me of my grandmother in that way, that just like, oh, $1 million, like pulled together. Like, how does she do that? Just look, you walk in the room and it's like, whoa, she looks amazing. And like a queen, that sort of, it's just so instructive in terms of what is our contribution, and that the way that our contribution evolves over time. And as an elder, you are a wisdom holder, you are presencing something important. She was born in
1928.
28.
Yeah, there's a sense of dignity there and self-respect,
I feel like we see that. Maybe I'm not correct in my thinking, but I feel like I see that more often in the East and in the West. Bless our hearts. We don't have as strongly ingrained as a cultural habit to really honor and revere elders. And I think it's a good experience for, all the younger folks in our community too, to just see what happens to a relationship when you circle back every Sunday and have a potluck. Or like every Friday evening and watch Jeopardy, everybody together, like that, circling back. There is a magic to a commitment and a constance of something when so many things are changing.
Yeah, and in a lot of places, people, used to have multi-generational families, either in the same house, in the same neighborhood. But it was, well, I don't know. I mean, I experienced it more in a small town. And that isn't very many people's experience anymore. So it is nice to come back to that. It's
so great to see the 92-year-old and the 11-year-old.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
And each of their faces light up when they see the other.
Yeah, I would love to see there be a sort of revolution in our country around, having this multi-generational, or, bringing our parents in our homes. And everyone has to make the choices they have to make, right? Everyone is in different types of situations. I'm not saying one is better than the other, but it's not necessarily easy, but it certainly adds a new richness. So any other things come to mind for this podcast episode around trusting yourself or doing what you feel is right for you?
Yeah, I do think this is so important, and just especially in the context of these days, because we're hearing all kinds of things, and some are in the context of, say, quarantine or the whole virus situation. And I think people need to be reminded just that they are free to make their own choices. If they're feeling vulnerable, that's totally fine, to stay home, protect yourself in whatever ways you feel are necessary. And if you're not feeling that that's appropriate for you, then act in a way that's appropriate for you. I think all of it is possible, and we can allow ourselves and each other to act in ways that are appropriate for each other without feeling like it's a judgment or a threat to what we personally decide. Everybody's in a different situation. Everybody's got different level of tolerance and for all kinds of things. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about how you see that in the caretaking role? Like when you see anyone in the, sphere of caretaking, like doing something a different way, or maybe your mom does something in a different way than you would, but there is this like allowing someone to be themselves and express their way.
It's challenging. It's really challenging. I mean, when you get down to the micro level, I think that's where you see it the most. And that's where I've been able to, I think, learn the most personally, is when I'm in a situation that pushes my buttons. Then I try to remember to ask, where am I doing that? Not if I'm doing it. Because if it pushed my buttons, that's a given. I'm already involved in it somewhere. So then it becomes, oh, where am I doing that? because then I can begin to look at myself with a little less judgment and allow myself the compassion that I need. Say my mother, is trying to be bossy and it's pushing my buttons. And then I say, where am I doing that? It's like, oh, yeah, Miss Bossy. You definitely got that going on sometimes. So I can be softer to myself. I can be softer to her. I can allow her to be. I can allow me to be. And then we can allow other people to make other choices in society as well. And even that extends to I've been able to take care of my parents at home. It's really an honor and a blessing. And I by no means think that that's possible for everybody. I'm lucky that they don't have, some kind of really challenging dementia or, Alzheimer's or something that would, again, it's too much for one person. It's too much for one person to handle all that. So whatever choices people have to make in order to keep their family safe and well and, as happy as can be, then that it's all part of that allowing.
Okay, so one thing popped into my mind, and that is we actually have had a fair amount of people in our community who sort of raise their hand and say, I am a caretaker. And we did have a handful of people talk about UTIs.
Oh, yeah.
Which I thought, if you got any hacks, tricks, tips, these are things that if you're not taking care of someone right now, you will be at some point. I mean, all of us are going to be caretaking if we're not currently. So just to know the tricks.
Well, that's a really important thing, because UTIs, and we're talking about urinary tract infections, are very common in old people, and they do not appear in the same way that they do when we're younger. Like, we probably remember when we were teenagers or in our 20s, and it was like a raging kind of thing. It's painful.
You got to pee every 2 minutes.
It's very,
it's like fire.
Noticeable, and you can't avoid it. You know what's going on. With old people, they can have them and not know. Like, the sensation level is either not intense or just different. And the presentation is more like dementia. They become confused. And it's so funny because I've been able to track over the last couple of years, like, different bacteria actually affect my mother differently. So I always have, when I have the urinalysis done, I have it cultured, because you have to find out what antibiotic are they susceptible to and what is it resistant to, because it's very hard to get rid of UTIs. You've got to be targeted with an antibiotic.
Know exactly what you have, so you have the remedy that can get it.
Exactly.
Otherwise,
well, I mean, sometimes they try to do like a broad spectrum Cipro, but that can have disastrous consequences. Like with my mother, she was given Cipro at one point. She got C. diff, which is a diarrhea disease, which can be deadly because it's just so super intense. Like, have diarrhea a dozen times a day, 20 times a day. I mean, it's very, very hard to take care of and very hard to cure. So you don't want to give a broad spectrum antibiotic unless you have no other choice. You want something very targeted for that particular bacteria. But like I say, each bacteria has a different presentation, at least in my mom. Like, she's pretty pulled together, and she would get one of these UTIs, and she would take her shirt and try to put it on her legs. She would take her, her pants and try to put it over her head. Like, it was like, if she's trying to put her clothes on wrong, it was like, hello, that's this UTI thing again.
And you could nail it down to one specific bacteria.
Pretty close, yeah. Because some of them are more intense, some of them are less intense.
Wow.
And some of them are kind of like, I think there's something going on, but I'm not sure. And then you test and you're like, yeah, that's another one. That's a more subtle one.
Raises the question of how many elders, in homes or assisted living are presenting with dementia, but it's actually just a UTI.
Oh, it's scary when you think about it, because unless somebody does the urinalysis in the culture, then they wouldn't know, because they're not complaining about pain. They're not complaining, and a lot of people at that age anyway are incontinent, so they're already in diapers or something, so that people are not even thinking that it's too frequent, or, frequency or urgency is an issue. So, yeah. So to know that UTIs in older people present differently, that it can appear as though it's dementia, confusion, Alzheimer's, rather than any kind of obvious urinary problem. That's a good thing to know. So
you figure out that she has an infection, you get the exact and precise bacteria done by a urine sample.
Yeah.
And then you can research. You did your own research.
They do the analysis, and then they'll tell you what it's susceptible to and not. But I always double check it, because, for instance, it could be resistant to the 3rd generation antibiotic in the cephalosporin category, but it's susceptible to the 4th generation. So it's really tricky. You have to have an advocate. And I think of what's going on these days, that's the thing that really gives me the most pause, is to think of all the people in the hospitals and the nursing homes who do not have access to their advocates, their family, who are the ones who are going to be looking out for them. I don't fault the doctors. They have hundreds of patients. I have one patient. That's my mom. So I'm going to knock myself out to make sure that she gets the best care possible. And I'm going to research things when, they tell me, oh yeah, this is it. And I look and I say, wait a minute.
So have you had cases where the information that you're getting is conflicting with your own research?
Multiple times. Yeah.
And do you bring that back up to the doctors and they
always
and you come to some sort of conclusion?
Yeah. And they educate me as well. Right now I'm on a UTI. They prescribe third generation. The bacteria is susceptible to fourth generation, and third generation is not supposed to be effective. And I called the doctor on it. What I found out was the fourth generation is only intravenous. That's how resistant these UTIs become. And so we'll see. We'll see what happens there.
That's after you putting so many effort into making your own. You want to talk about the essential oil?
Yeah. So then I would take whatever bacteria she has, and then I would research which essential oils are the most effective against that bacteria. And then we make wipes with those essential oils in them to help things along. There's also a new product that has colloidal silver in it, in the soap, that's made for recurrent UTIs, and that one has helped somewhat. Yeah. Yeah, in the beginning, I thought I could do it without antibiotics, and I haven't been able to. Some bacteria we could get rid of E. coli without it, but the more rugged ones we couldn't. If anybody has any tips on that, let me know. Still looking. In the end, it goes back to what you were saying, really being present. Whether they're sick or not, or clear-minded or not, being able to sit with somebody with that sense of love and compassion and dropping the agenda. It's like, yeah, I don't have to get anything done. I don't have to, check up on my phone right now, and just like let it go, be present, and feel that space. We were talking about the spaciousness earlier, and that spaciousness that we can tap into, that's, behind us and around us and surrounding us and stretching out limitlessly in all directions, is not an empty spaciousness. That spaciousness is inseparable from awareness, and it's inseparable from compassion. And so sometimes I just remind myself and I say, what a space we're actually made of compassion. It has a quality to it that if I forget to look or forget to recognize, I might not remember is there. But if I remember, and then I'm able to hold everything in that spaciousness, hold it all within the sense of love and compassion. It just makes it more meaningful. And I think people can feel that, even if they're confused or not clear, not feeling well, that they can feel when you hold them and the space in compassion. And it's a totally accepting, totally sweet, loving way to be.
And totally liberating, that there isn't necessarily anything to do. There are things to do and there are things to do, but that we don't need to feel like there's something we need to do to be of value or to offer another human being. That being is a lot, in fact. So any last words of wisdom that you find yourself telling people recently, or that people are seeking you out for advice?
Well, I think it's pretty common these days to find that we're up and down, and that some people find suddenly that they're, having a fear moment or having an anxiety moment, or and the first thing to know is just that all of that is so temporary, and not in a way like to force ourselves out of it, but just to like, oh man, like it comes and goes. And if you can, just remember to feel the earth under your feet, under your body, to feel the space around you. Go out and stand in the sun. and feel the sky, that the elements are absolutely your friends on so many levels, and they will bring you back to your state of knowing and your state of balance. And that can be a good place to be.
You know, it's funny because you reminded me that this morning I went for my run and I was like having one of those grinding moments where I was like, in this pattern loop of like, how do I do more? How do I be of service? How should I be on social media? What are the things I should say? What do people want? What's going to resonate? Just like grinding as I was running and knowing I was grinding. And so I was like, so as I was running, I was like feeling my feet on the earth and feeling the trees. And I was like, okay, I am totally open to some signs. I'm open to listening. I'm open to messengers. I'm open to, whatever wants to arise in the space to give me some sort of reminder, reflection. And so I was like mid-run and suddenly, I was thinking like birds or insects or something. And I'm running down the road and suddenly I hear this garter out the side of a minivan. And it was this gentleman who was a security guard when I was sort of like a motivational security guard. If you remember Oscar, in the seed spot program, we were both it's like an entrepreneurial startup program. And it was hilarious. He like stopped, he like pulled over the minivan and hopped out. We had a good chat and it was a very short chat. But he was saying to me, why do you want to be bigger and better? How come you're not just fine and right as you are? You're enough. You're enough. And everyone's enough. And I was like, you're right. Why am I striving and struggling so much? I would tell everyone the same thing, like, you're enough. Things are just fine right where they're at. Everything is just fine right now. And then I ran off, chuckling to myself. So I, just want to say that actually that method of being able to just really ask and get some sort of bounce back from the universe is it's pretty alive and well and immediate.
That's hilarious. Oscar's out there driving around waiting for the next person to ask for a sign. Oh, that's great. And you probably haven't seen Oscar in like 5 or 6 years, right?
Yes, and Seed Spot.
And that was 7 years ago.
Yeah. So I haven't seen him for 7 years. Yeah. I didn't even know he lived in our neighborhood.
Oh, that's awesome.
I mean, that's one thing I learned too is that, you just run a few blocks out from your normal area and you start seeing all kinds of interesting things. Anything else? Oh, I did have one other question for you. Like your favorite flower essences right now or anything you're working with? You did mention earlier what you
Crown flower is phenomenal. Like, oh my God, that one I had other things too that were really, it's so perfect for. But it's all the same vein for me. It's been like taking bold action, maybe an action that it would be easy not to take. Like it would have been easy for me not to bring my mom here. I was pretty settled in Florida in its own way. Everything was going okay there. Like I wouldn't have had to do it, but it was bold, and it was, some part of me knows that it's the best possible thing for both her and me. And so taking bold action, and there were other examples where that same kind of thing happened where it would have been easy not to, so easy not to. It would have been such in my old pattern not to. And yet to step outside and just make an effort in an effortless way. It's so hard to kind of capture that, but there is no failure. It's like, wow, there's no downside.
If you knew you weren't going to fail, what would you do?
Yeah, exactly. It's that in action, not just pondering or theorizing. Yeah, I love crown flower. That's super great. And like I said, I also took a lot of banana yucca, which is for hidden potential and unveiling other talents. But it also has that aspect, doesn't it, of collaboration, and especially women working together. And I thought that was really, really helpful, getting five of us working like a team to get my mom here, like in the Florida contingent, and then coming back to Phoenix. Yeah.
All right, I you guys use flower essences during your home.
Super big. Oh my God, we had a very generous supply, and yeah, for months we were hitting it hard, like all through my dad's illness and his passing, and then the transition afterwards and the move. Yeah, we had like a buffet of flower essences, and so every time, any drink, any time, typically I choose 3 different elixirs. Yeah, I don't know how we do it without it, really, and I don't think my mom could have done it without it, because it subtly breaks down those barriers that I can't. Like she had a sense of I can't do anything for a long time, and I never heard her say that. Never heard her say that when we were in the last few months.
Well, thanks for being with us. Really appreciate your wisdom.
Oh, totally my pleasure.
And you can find more of Lisa at weiofchocolate.com, Wei, W-E-I, of chocolate. She runs our sister company, if you don't know that already, and offers subscriptions in dark chocolate. I mean, does life get any better?
Meditation chocolate. That's what's happening.
Meditation chocolate.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening to the Flower Lounge. I'm Katie Hess, and we'll be releasing a new podcast every Wednesday. If you like what you heard, or you know someone who might be touched by our conversation, share it with them. And don't forget to subscribe. To find out what your favorite flowers mean about you, take the quiz at LOTUSWEI.com.